Hi, my name is James Rozak. This is the Morning Mercy podcast, which is dedicated to supporting those on a journey away from the teaching of William Branham. And today I'm going to start leaning towards a subject and a direction that I would like to take over the course of the next while. It's going to be a slow unfolding. As you may have noticed, I'm not consistently posting podcast episodes, and more or less the reason is life is really busy for me, and I'm always working at trying to make new content. But for where I'm going to go, I'd like to continue speaking to heart issues and emotional issues, and really kind of dig into some of the reasons that I found alarm at the time of my leaving the message. It was just a recognition that I really felt like people lacked tools within the message that helped foster a deep type of healing that I think a lot of people needed. And that was addressing abuses that maybe somebody would have experienced. And the problem when you're speaking about abuses, you're raising the issue of where did this abuse come from? And when you do that, of course, you're looking at family dynamics, you're looking at life circumstances, and by nature of looking at that, you're often looking at parent relationships, you're looking at a lot of intimate family relationships that have been in place from the time of childhood going into adulthood. It then lends itself to looking at the dynamics of families, the dynamics of upbringing. And when you have a family that is in the environment of the message, then you have to begin questioning where are these ideas coming from in terms of how parenting is done and things that are taught into children. And are they constructive? Are they healthy? Are they conducive to somebody who is wholehearted, feeling worthy, feeling valued, all of those types of things? It is a sensitive area of conversation, but I would really like to go there because this is one of the reasons why I saw red flags. And yeah, I'm gonna get there. On the way there, though, I'm going to slowly walk in that direction, just addressing other things that are coming to mind. I'm always trying to figure out how to present myself through these. I don't want to be too formal. I also don't want to be too scripted. I more or less just speak from the top of my head. I might jot down a few notes and then I just start rambling. And it gets a little bit difficult to record because I'm also not wanting to bore my audience by rambling in different directions but it's been in my mind of just also presenting to my audience this idea that part of the healing process, I think, is setting some very clear intentions or hopes for yourself, and kind of defining these so that you're aiming for somewhere in particular for your healing. I think sometimes we have this notion that time is going to be a healer. And you don't even necessarily know what it is that you're healing from because you haven't dug into those areas of yourself. You just know there's a lot of pent up feeling, and you're bottling up a lot of emotion, and you don't know exactly what it is that's causing it. You don't have words even to describe it. It's just there and it's heavy. And until you begin to kind of unpack what's going on inside and begin naming what's going on inside, then you're not necessarily going to get to the point where you're putting your finger on areas of pain, of the causation, of the path that will lead you out of those strong feelings and emotions, and if you're not actually dealing with it, then it's possibly just going to sit there, and you're hoping, though, that time will resolve it on its own. And I am of the opinion that, yeah, you may learn to deal with, you may learn to live with it. You may learn to compartmentalize it and kind of shove it down or push it aside. But those things will continually pop up, and you'll find yourself in a situation where somebody says something, you're in a place or with somebody or some situation or circumstance, and it's like somebody puts their finger on that place and it just really hurts. All of a sudden, all of that contained, bottled up feeling that you've kind of put aside will just kind of flood to the surface. And there you are once again, reliving that. I think being able to talk about it, not feeling like there's a stigma of weakness, for feeling vulnerable, for being open, for being raw. You shouldn't have to feel ashamed for feeling, essentially, I'm going to call it, it's perceived as weakness, to be vulnerable, to be raw, to be open. But I don't think it's weakness whatsoever. I think that's the beginning of real strength. And that's the real beginning of healing, is when you can kind of crack open the defenses and allow yourself to feel the feelings that you have. And yeah, getting there, it takes a lot of bravery. It sometimes takes some coaching. It takes support. It also takes learning, because learning how to do that, it's not something that's often natural to us, especially from us who come from an environment like the Message. We did something in the Message, and there's a lot of ways to look at this, but I'm going to give you one insight into Message life that maybe you didn't even really think about. And it's one of the reasons why we're filled with a lot of fear when we begin to break away from the Message. And then a lot of feeling follows that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's called mirroring. And mirroring is something that we probably didn't even know we were necessarily doing, but it's part of the culture of being of being in a community similar to the Message. So there's a lot of subconscious things that occur through mirroring and the behavior of mirroring. You are building a rapport and a connection with somebody, because as you have two people or a group of people mirroring their behavior, it's a nonverbal way of establishing trust and building connection with another person and another group of people. It's like a wavelength of we're in the same place, we're in the same mode, we're in the same zone, we have the same thoughts and the same attitude, and we're not going to violate each other, because it's a way of building comfort and showing respect to each other. And it brings everything to this place of safety and comfort. And by nature, that also brings about approval, because if we are all in this synchronicity, then we're also in this place of approval, because, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And you just notice this mirroring that occurs subconsciously, constantly, just back and forth, this mirroring that occurs within a community. It's not obvious to people in the community. It's very obvious to people outside of it. And that's where somebody who comes from the outside, maybe they weren't raised around that, but they begin to pick up on the nuances, because they see these two people mirroring each other. And the mirroring is very evident. It's in behavior, it's in dress, it's in conversation, it's in verbal phrasing. You'll see the congregation is mirroring the pastor, and families are mirroring each other, and couples are mirroring each other. And there's this, it's this dance that's always going on and somebody coming from the outside. Well, if you think of it like music, they're now picking up on the tune, and they're going to start moving in the same way to the same rhythm, because that is how they begin to do this, what I described before, this sense of building rapport, building connection, building comfort, finding comfort, sharing respect, and then ultimately finding approval. And this whole process of mirroring is just the way of life. And you can go to another church and you notice they might have a little bit of a different way of mirroring each other. And I notice this all the time. I know I did it because you're trying to get in step so that you build rapport and build trust and find acceptance, and you're trying to make it really comfortable. So you get in and you start mirroring that group and that church and that pastor and the way that church worships and the way they get together and they fellowship and the mode of life and the pace of life that they do. It's often very similar. And I'm not saying it's exact, but this mirroring that occurs is your status quo that ensures your safety and your approval. And when you begin to disconnect from that, when you begin to break away from the mirroring, and now you begin to think a little bit differently, and you begin to do just a little bit differently, and it comes from a place of concern, it comes from a place of just awakening to the fact that you can see there's an issue, say with the community. The first signs that something is wrong is you're no longer mirroring. You're no longer mirroring the group. And as you begin to break away, you are so critically aware of the fact that somebody's going to notice that you're not mirroring anymore. You're not in cadence with everybody else. And what that does, it begins to ignite the feelings that are really underneath the surface, because all the while you're also feeling your own thoughts and you're having your own feelings the whole time that you've been mirroring. If you do have some sort of an issue, when you begin to break away from that narrative, it suddenly becomes clear to you. Like I said, when somebody's on the outside, they can recognize the pattern. They can see the mirroring that's been ongoing and part of the culture of that group. When you begin to break away, it is very apparent to you in what ways you've been neglecting yourself, neglecting how you really feel, neglecting how this certain thing actually made you feel, neglecting how this certain circumstance actually bothered you. And this certain thing that happened to you actually really hurt you. You begin allowing yourself to have those thoughts, because that's what happens when you begin to break away from that sort of rhythm. And that's also where you begin to experience those heavy feelings of fear and anxiety and hurt and pain. It just really gets really close to the surface. And it's not that you weren't feeling them before. It's just that those feelings weren't valid. They were out of sync. They weren't permitted to stay there, because that would put you out of rhythm with everything that you were supposed to be performing and the way that you were supposed to be living and the way that you were supposed to be living out your Christianity within this particular group. So yeah, that's what begins to happen, and that's why the feelings get really raw. And that's why I really recommend that you begin to lean into that and not be afraid of those feelings that begin to bubble up. Because again, you can leave a group and then you can latch on to something else, somewhere else, whether it's another church group, whether it's another social group of some kind. You'll lock into something and you'll begin mirroring that as well, because that's our tendency. And what I would suggest is you need to begin to lean into your real emotions and your real feelings and the things that are really going on inside you. It's a very difficult thing to begin to do. And that's where I've had some comments recently on my on some of the things I've said online. It's, because I express that feeling of pain that often comes up in people as they begin to walk away from the church. And the critics of people who leave would suggest, well, more or less, that something is wrong with you. Like, it just shows that something was wrong with you, that you never really had an experience. And I'll say those feelings have been so suppressed and so pushed down and so invalidated over the course of time that you were in the church, that the first time that you're allowed to actually feel what you really feel and what really has been going on inside you is when you break away from that. Because suddenly, your relationship that you had with certain people begins to show itself for what it really was. And the thing that happened to you in certain situations, in your family, in your marriage, in your church, with your pastor, with whatever the scenario, I can't put my finger on that for you, but like, you begin to feel the actual real feelings that you had all the way along. And yet it manifests in an extraordinarily painful and difficult way. And people who are still in the church looking at you, they look at you as though you're falling apart. And in a way, you don't want to show that sort of weakness, because it makes it look like you're falling apart, and they don't understand that. And that becomes a weapon against you. And so I'll just say this, like, this is why I feel like there's a real need. And I began to observe a real need for genuine gifts of counseling in message churches, is because I think there's a lot of people who are dealing with this underneath the surface of everything. They're not allowed to let it come up. They're not allowed to feel the actual feelings of what they've been through. And yet they're swallowing it. And it's like anything else. If you're not dealing with a real issue, like, it's going to have detrimental impact on who you are and how you live and how you think and how you live out your relationships. I really strongly believe that there's a lot of people in the message who struggle in their marriage situations, for example, is because when they're in the church and when they're in the environment of the church, remember, they're mirroring. They're doing the mirroring thing where they're matching cadence for cadence, act for act, behavior for behavior, the way that they're supposed to perform in front of other people in the church. But then when they get back to their home, when they get back, the behavior that they've been pushing down, the feelings that they're pushing down, the things that they're struggling with emotionally, it comes out in the home. It comes out in private. It comes out in the way that a husband and wife interact with each other, or the way that they interact with their children. And those people get to see the actual condition of who a person is, or they get to see pieces of it. It differs from situation to situation, but that's what happens often in the home. And then you get back into the church environment and everyone's doing the mirroring thing again. And our family's doing great. And I'm doing great in my spiritual walk with God. I'm just matching the expectation that everyone has for me. Then I get back home and I'm unhappy and my marriage is struggling and I can't have good, honest conversations with my partner, and my kids are struggling and we don't know how to talk this out, and we can't have good communication, and we can't fix this. So on and so on. This is more or less the stuff that I would love to get into a little bit. And whether you're in the message or not, if you're a message believer and you're actually listening to what I'm saying and it's hitting home to you a little bit, I don't care that you're in the message. I see you as a human. I see you as a person. And so long as you stay in the message, fine. That we don't have to agree on that. But what I would like to see is that You do not have to hide behind a performance of everything is okay, because you might actually need some genuine help for yourself, because you might be dealing with depression and you can't show that on the surface. You have to mirror what everybody else in the church is doing so that you feel safe in the community, so that you be approved by the community. And what I'm saying is sometimes you need to get down and raw and honest with how you really feel. And you need to get with somebody who will actually really listen and not judge you for the fact that you're struggling inside. Like, I would actually sit down with somebody in the message to talk about this stuff. It doesn't matter that you're in the message. We could respectfully disagree and choose to be kind to one another. And I don't need to agree with anybody to be able to care about them. Because I think when it comes down to it, the performance that people have to go through, a lot of people get really tired of the performance, of performing to an appearance of strength, to the appearance of being spiritually strong, when inside there's something else going on. I think there's people really hungry for that. Now, if you've left the message, this is a danger that we fall into, is because we've been so used to trying to appear strong, like we've got it all together, that we don't allow us to go down a path of healing in the way that we need healing to deal with some of the things that are going on in our life. We're mirroring the idea of somebody who's strong, of somebody who isn't falling apart, of somebody who isn't suffering a little bit from the fact that they've left the message. Like, you don't want to show any weakness. You got to show that you're doing the right thing and you're strong and everything's going good. And what I think often is a lot of people who leave the message really, really need help. So there's resources too. And I encourage people to really dig into spending time not pursuing a spiritual answer immediately. Like, don't look to fill the void immediately with something else. You don't need to rush. That sense of urgency to rush to the next thing is not necessary. But what you could probably stand to do is to just breathe for a while. Take some time. What I'm saying is enrich your mind with an idea of what it means to heal. I think I read a book called Leaving the Fold, and it was just talking about the experience of leaving hyper-fundamentalist type groups and just sharing some of the stories of what it's like doing that. If I recall, it was stories of people just leaving churches and the experiences they had of that. You can read, spend time just digging into resources of things that will inform you a little bit about what might be going on in the experience of walking away from a church. And what you'll begin to recognize is there's patterns, whether it's the message, whether it's another form of extreme fundamentalist religion. There's all kinds of different types of groups and experiences of people who walk away. And those people share in the experience. The label doesn't matter. You can put whatever label on it that you want, but there is a shared experience that all of us have when we're leaving that sort of, because there's factors in play that affect our mind, that affect how we feel, that affect our heart, that affect our behavior. And there's a consistent pattern between all of these, which it's going to resonate with you. You're going to relate to it, and it's going to inform you a little bit about where you're coming from and possibly where you need to get to. You'll begin to find answers in a lot of areas of life, but put it in your mind that you're now on a journey of informing yourself, of becoming informed, of learning a little bit about yourself, partly through other people's experiences, partly about digging into your own heart and finding out what's going on and some of the factors that have been influencing you and impacting you. Be open to it. There's also, there's a lot of great podcasts. There's a lot of great things online that you could find. I really became a student. That was my way of doing it. My wife, for example, has taken a strong interest in continuing to learn and to build her own skills in terms of, she was there when I was doing the counseling. She played a role in supporting when we were in the church and we were counseling couples and that sort of thing. And so now she's actually continued that in the aftermath. So while I stopped doing it, she's continued to do that. And she has an approach that I feel like could really help a lot of people. She's got a program where she calls it the Sacred Self, and you can listen to her own podcast. I'll put a link in the comments below where you could find it yourself. And I think she really likes to speak to women in particular, but I think anybody who's in a healing journey and trying to find their sense of self and purpose and where they're no longer mirroring what other people are doing, but they're actually trying to get in tune with who they are inside and the worthiness that they have inside and the sacredness of you as an individual. That's something that is foreign to a lot of us because we've been so used to giving up who we are to conform or mirror what we've been told we should be, that we don't even have a sense of who we are and our own worthiness and the voice inside of ourselves that has a place and a right and value to speak and to be heard by ourselves even, and in the world that's around us. So yeah, that might be interesting to you. There's a great wealth of resources for people to tune into to get healing. Because I know not everybody is apt to really dig in, but I really recommend taking some time. And so I'm going to be one of those resources in my own way of just speaking to issues like this. And I've teased this before, but I'm going to get into talking about the counseling program that I began to learn. It's a technique called Caring for the Heart. And I'm going to share a little bit about what I learned and my experience in the message. And I don't mean to keep teasing this like it's coming, but it is coming. I share about that on my own website. I think I have a five or 6 part series where I write about the experience. It's very foreign to somebody who's in the message and listening to me talk. I can understand why this sounds confusing or like I'm just talking about, crazy stuff. I think anybody who's bothered to listen this far, who's left the message or who's left some form of fundamentalist faith, I think you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And this will mean something to you. So this is my encouragement over the next while to not be afraid to go to those places and to be vulnerable to go to the places where it hurts a little bit. I really do think that's where the healing is going to take place, is learning to go to those hard places, those places that hurt a little bit extra, those places that sometimes you've never even really decided to crack open any light to that part of your heart or that part of the inside, because it's going to hurt and you know what it's going to mean if you go there. But that's where healing will take place. So my encouragement is just as we all go on this journey together. I'm now over 10 years down the road on my journey. Some of you are just stepping out. I get messages from you, many of you who are just beginning the journey and you're just beginning to know what it is to feel really from the inside what's going on. And you're really beginning to recognize that you've got some things to work on. There's nothing wrong with you. That's an important thing to say also. There's nothing wrong with you. Those feelings, those emotions that you're feeling are telling you something. And part of the process is learning to hear what those emotions and those feelings are saying to you. They're just talking to you. They're nothing to be afraid of. They're telling you a story. They're speaking up because they want to be heard. And feeling those feelings, you might need to learn how to feel those feelings in a way that's constructive, but you can do it. And you'll get somewhere. I promise you'll get somewhere if you keep going down that road. So I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to cheer you on. I'm here to, if any way that I can, to help be a part of that process through just talking about stuff like this. So yeah, in a way, when I make an episode like this, it feels like I talked about nothing, but I actually think I talked about a lot of stuff that is very poignant. And so I don't mind ending off this episode right here. And next time when I come back, I'm going to continue down this path of talking in this way. I got a lot of material that I could go into, and I would really like to. So thank you so much for spending some time with me through this episode. Be strong, be brave, be kind to yourself. And yes, I'm going to be so brave as to say, when you get criticized for your decision to leave, be kind to even those who criticize you. And I think we would all agree that we would enjoy for all of us to be on a healthy path, whether you're in the message, whether you're out of the message, whatever the story is. I think we all want the best for each other. And that's the attitude that I certainly want to take. Thank you. We'll see you next time.